Episode 15, The Decline of the Digital Nomad. Welcome to HR Decoded, where we uncomplicate the people problems breaking your business. I'm your host, Annekah Hall, fractional COO and People Ops Strategist. And today we're diving into a trend that's been quietly shifting the future of work, the decline of the digital nomad. So you've probably seen the headlines where fewer workers are living abroad, returning to office mandates are on the rise, and companies are tightening their travel and flexibility policies. But here's the part no one's talking about. That decline isn't just a lifestyle shift, it's a business risk. And for founders and leaders, the lesson here is clear. Ignoring remote work frameworks, even temporary ones, could be holding your company back. In this episode, I'm going to be sharing what's driving the decline and why it matters more than you think, and how founders with frameworks that actually help their businesses will thrive. Now, I do want to make sure I'm being transparent about my bias here. I'm a very loud and proud digital nomad. I want to give you a bit of backstory on how I ended up as a digital nomad, but I want to be clear that I live that lifestyle even today. So starting back in 2020, 2021, during the midst of the pandemic, I was living between the Bay Area and Texas, okay? So I had a place in the Bay Area, in Oakland actually, and then also in Dallas, Texas. And so everything was shutting down in the Bay Area. So I decided, okay, I'm going to stay down in Texas permanently. I had a lot of family there because I just couldn't take it. There was nowhere to go. All you do was walk around Lake Merritt. There wasn't really much to do. And so the company I was working for at the time was fully remote. And really, I had been remote for years before that, before it was even cool or a topic. I had been remote in multiple jobs at that point. And so that was similar. And I was doing my consulting on the side. And like most people, I was just kind of surviving. We weren't really thriving during that point. I don't know if anyone else feels like that, but that's definitely how I felt. And so, I wasn't going out. I was bored and I was feeling really unmotivated. And like I said, I was in Texas. And so for part of that time. And then maybe some of you will remember this. There was this crazy, unexpected snowstorm in Dallas a few years back, right? And it caused a major highway pile up. There was no infrastructure to, prepared for it. And I was there at the time, and my house was surrounded by snow, and I was stuck there for a few days, and I had very little food because definitely was not prepared, and frozen pipes. And when I say I was unprepared, I was born and raised in Southern California, in Los Angeles. I had no concept of what to do with snow. So when pipes froze over, I didn't even know what I was supposed to do to even prevent that. So just to kind of paint the picture. And so while I'm sitting there kind of stuck, the internet was going in and out, I pulled my phone up and just started looking for warm places to live and travel to. I was like, I got to get out of here, right? And so when the roads cleared up, I kid you not, I packed my bags, I packed up my house, I put everything in storage, I hired a property manager, and I moved to Peru. Why Peru? There's a lot behind that decision, but I moved to Peru. I had no idea what I was thinking at the time, but I knew I needed to go somewhere, but I knew I also still needed to be able to work. So I made sure that the apartment that I was moving to had Wi-Fi and that I was going to be staying near a Starbucks, and I was gone, okay? And now I didn't know if it would work out, but I knew that the digital nomad lifestyle was for me when I was able to hold a Zoom conference on the steps of a mountain overlooking Machu Picchu. I kid you not. And if you are tuning in onto my YouTube channel, I will insert a picture somewhere on the screen so you can see me overlooking Machu Picchu with my backpack that had my laptop and my hotspot. Okay, I didn't even know if my hotspot would work up there, but it did, and I was fully able to enjoy the scenery, enjoy the hike up there, sit down, have my conference call, get what I needed to get done, and go on about my day. Okay, it was wonderful, and that was the moment I knew that the digital nomad, lifestyle was for me. Now, Over the years, I've moved on for Peru, as you can imagine. As a matter of fact, I've lived and spent significant time in about 14 countries so far across 4 continents with my laptop, my mic, and a rotating cast of Airbnb hosts. And it's not uncommon for me to be zooming in, into a strategy call from Chiang Mai or building compensation plans sitting on a bench, at the port in Croatia. So while I'd consider my case to be extreme, okay, it's a very extreme case of digital nomadism, I am living proof that you can be productive while living a digital nomad lifestyle, okay? And for years, other digital nomads like myself were kind of the poster children for the future of work. And again, during the pandemic, millions of people discovered that they could work anywhere, and they did. Places like Lisbon, Bali, Mexico City were major hubs for global talent. And the ideas of kind of having laptops on the beach and Zoom calls from cafes and Slack pings across time zones was really just romanticized. And companies started to adapt out of almost necessity, and they realized that their employees could deliver results without ever stepping foot in an office. But I would say by 2023, between 2023 and today, the pendulum really swung back. Return to office mandates began to roll out, and not just in big tech, but across industries. We are seeing that shift, if you will, back to people returning back to their office. And there were others that came into play. There were other things, that came into play, like economic uncertainty, pushed many people back to seeking more stability closer to home, right? I can't say that everything about being a digital nomad is all, rose-colored glasses. You do have that situation where you're kind of moving from place to place. There are other nomads who are coming and going. So finding a community, things like that could be difficult. So in an economic uncertainty, sometimes it's, a lot more reassuring to be closer to family, closer to home, right? Also, governments really started tightening up their visa programs, limiting, long-term stays. It was a little bit different in those first couple of years because countries were pushing those nomad visas out because it was helping their economy thrive. And so now some of them started to roll back those visas as well. And in the case of some of the startups and early stage founders, I found some of my clients and some of the folks that I was working with or around, they were a little bit overwhelmed by the chaos of running a business during that time. And with that feeling of being overwhelmed and feeling like they're in the middle of that chaos, they started seeking the low-hanging controllable targets, which is basically my call out for people, the people that they feel that they can control. And they started to kind of push this perception of equating remote to unmanageable because it was something that they could control. And that's just my opinion. Now you might disagree, but that is what I observed. Okay. And so what was the result? There was a visible decline in digital nomadism. But the key that I want to highlight is that the lifestyle may be shrinking, but the business opportunities that it created are still very real. And companies that altogether abandon that flexible framework are cutting themselves off from those opportunities. So I want to talk about that a bit. Some people are probably asking themselves, what opportunities are companies missing out on? What business impacts am I talking about, right? So first, I want to talk about the missed global insights, okay? When people work abroad, or they were working abroad, they were bringing back cultural context, customer insights, and creative ideas that you really cannot replicate in a boardroom. I worked with a lot of technical digital product-based companies, and usually their target audiences are global, right? And without understanding the differences in cultures and how messaging and positioning resonates in various target areas, you are operating almost blind when it comes to certain segments of the market. Now, I'm not going to get into AI and other research software tools in this particular episode, but I can tell you from experience, you do not know what you do not know. When I've explained this to other executives, they'll say something like, well, we can just hire in that region. And I say, okay, let's explore that, Mr. and Mrs. Founder of an early stage startup. Do you know the employment laws there? Do you have a bank account there? Do you have the infrastructure to manage and communicate with someone in that region? Are you okay with are you okay with just Zoom, right? Because they say, oh, we have Zoom. But what happens when there's a 6 to 10 hour time difference? How are you engaging that person and supporting them? And if you're okay, again, if you're okay with hiring somebody not in the headquartered office, then clearly you are okay with remote work and seem to think that people can be productive during off hours and not face to face. And we circle right back to square one with why you are pushing for a return to office policies to begin with when you are okay with people not being in the office, right? Now, I have had clients that wanted to expand globally, and I feel like mine and other digital nomad lifestyles were really able to accommodate. For example, I assisted a company with expanding into Latin America by conducting in-person interviews with local candidates. Because of my flexibility, I was able to move to Mexico City for a while and be able to connect with people and find other candidates that might not have seen our Indeed posts, right? And so those insights really shaped the hiring approach that the company was using. And I was able to do that in ways that Zoom never could, okay? And speaking about hiring, that leads me to my next missed opportunity for companies where they start to narrow their talent pools in a way that I don't think that is productive, I would say, for an organization. So if a company insists on everyone in office full time, you shrink your hiring options almost overnight. You lose access to brilliant people in other cities, states, and countries. Because of what I do, the space that I work in, I come across some amazing people and talent. I mean, just the minds of the people I have met around the world are just, I mean, it's eye-opening, right? Because I think people's view of the world is really kind of that 30-mile radius around where they live sometimes. And if you are somebody who is actively traveling and, immersing yourself in other cultures, what you see in the insights you gain personally, but what you're able to share, the people you connect with, is something that is unmatched. And because of that, I have a wide network spanning the globe, all around the world, of just people that I'm one of my business personality traits is being a connector. And so I collect people and I think about people and I try to, connect people from all over the world. And I can meet somebody in Turkey and connect them with a business in Arizona for a problem they have that I learned about months later. And they'll be perfect for what that company needs. But that connection will never happen if the company has this within 20 miles of the headquarter policy, which is amazing that people still have that, but whatever, but it's another topic for another day. And then companies are not realizing that flexibility equals retention, okay? Employees today value autonomy and trust. This idea that they're not productive or they're at home taking naps and not getting any work done is ridiculous. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't some bad apples who take advantage, because they exist in and out of the office, okay? But that is not the majority, and people will leave your organization. Okay, they will leave. People will not stay where they feel micromanaged or unable to have a strong work-life balance. And there will always be a company out there that is willing to provide them with the flexibility they need. Because believe me, flexibility isn't just a perk, it is also a retention strategy. When I worked in London, I was able to attend investor meetings while still running operations back in the US. That kind of flexibility made me more effective, not less. Imagine what it signals to employees when you trust them to deliver from where they are, okay? So what should founders do? Look, I get it. You rented an overly expensive office in San Francisco or New York, and now you want butts in the seat so you aren't walking down empty hallways. So first, let me say this. Please do not do that. I have so many clients, people I've worked with, people I know that do this. The days of businesses using their address as a status symbol are long over, okay? So let's shift to solutions and see if we can get to a happy medium. I'm not saying every employee should be logging in from Bali or hopping between co working spaces in Barcelona. What I am saying is this: if you do not design remote frameworks, you'll lose talent, agility, and resilience. And here's the kicker: your framework doesn't have to be for forever. It could be for 90 days, right? Let's use that as a base. Let's talk about a 90-day pilot, okay? A season of flexibility, a structured policy that says, yes, you can work abroad for 3 months. And here's how, and here's what to expect. So, as a high level framework for founders, let's talk about, communication norms, okay? So decide what is async versus synchronous. Not every meeting needs to be live, okay? How many times have we heard that could have been an email or a Slack, okay? Figure that piece out. Time zone expectations. Define overlapping hours. Make sure, for example, that there is, a 3 to 4 hour overlap of core availability times across teams. You could do that. That way, that gives flexibility on both sides. Set accountability metrics. Measure outputs, not hours. Make clear goals that are not location specific. It makes the location irrelevant, right? You can also put in travel / work from anywhere guidelines that spell out approval processes, security requirements, duration limits, okay? And that's it. Right? That's high level, but it's pretty clear, right? Heck, if you can even set the location options to help with future business expansions. Okay, the possibilities there are endless. If you want to move into a certain region, how about you have some folks that want to be, digital nomads live in that region and help you set that up? Pretty simple, right? We could talk more about that at another time. And if you're a founder thinking about that, and you just don't know where to start, that's literally the work that I do with my clients. I help companies design frameworks that balance flexibility with accountability. If you want a step-by-step playbook on how to implement this, schedule some time with me. I'll walk you through it, okay? So what is my point here, right? Let's before I close out, let's kind of wrap it up. For me personally, I have seen how companies have thrived as a result of digital nomadism. And I do believe that it isn't a distraction, right? I think that's how it's being framed these days, that it's a distraction. It's really not. It was actually an accelerator. It gave companies perspective, access, and leverage. And I believe companies that walk away from that flexibility are handicapping themselves. We live in a global economy and can't afford to only operate locally anymore. Okay. And founders, I'm telling you, you can't afford to simply shrug and say, back to office, problem solved. The truth is, flexibility is a business advantage. It gives you access to talent, insights, and retention strategies your competitors may not have. So, whether it's a 90-day pilot or a long term framework, my recommendation for you is to create policies that let your people thrive from wherever they are. You'll build a stronger, more resilient company. And again, if you need help designing that framework, visit my website at www.hrdecoded.pro, book a call with me, and I'll help you build a system that works for your stage, your team, and your goals. Okay, and that's all the time that I have today. Thank you so much for tuning into HR Decoded. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, like, share your perspective in the comments. And if you or someone you know is interested in the digital nomad lifestyle, also feel free to contact me. I'll help you out as well. Okay? Until next time, have a good one. Bye.